Hello and welcome to the Afri Dominion Show. My name is Freeman, Singirankabo, and thank you so very much for joining our program today. Those of you joining us live, especially if you're joining us live from the social medias like Facebook and YouTube, welcome. Welcome. We are so thrilled and glad that you can find some time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And for the rest of you joining us live from television or radio station, welcome as well. Be sure to join us if you can, but you must come on social media in order for you to connect directly through us. We have Zoom open for each and every one of you. We have phone lines open. Be sure, if you'd love to come in and join the conversation, we would love to have you today. The conversation that we have here at Afri Dominion, it's a conversation that we get to have with you in the spirit. We are very frank when we speak with you. We are very bold and we ask no apologies to no one. Why? Because the conversation that we get to share here, these are the conversations that we actually hold dear to our hearts. And it is this spirit that everything we share here at Afri Dominion Show, we share it in the spirit of truth, love, and trust. And these are the benchmarks by which we would love each and every one of you to actually measure both the integrity and the validity of the content that we provide with you. And with that in mind, we would very much love to welcome all your feedbacks, no matter what you have to say, both the good, the bad, and the ugly. But we'd love to hear if you have anything positive to add to our programs that we run all different times, and we would love to hear from you. But be sure to also share some of those comments that you feel that we can actually improve, because each and every day we thrive to do better. We thrive to do better in everything that we do. So for those of you who do not know how to reach us, please go to our website, www.afridominion.com, www.afridominion.com, and get in touch with us, and any one of us there will be able to help you out. You will find our direct contacts, those of you who want to get in touch with us, but also you will be able to find our phone number, and we will encourage you to use that if you need to get in touch with us. Our primary email that we use, it is info@afridominion.com. info@afridominion.com. And with that in mind, I want to go right ahead again and give you all a huge welcome on our Wednesdays. Wednesdays is a special day, but because I know not all of you know what we do on Wednesdays, I want to go ahead and start first and foremost with what this show is about and the program itself. So what is Afri Dominion? Afri Dominion, it's an idea that inspires, that encourages, and that advocates, even help a complete and total take back or dominion of the entire continent of Africa, one country at a time, by its sons, daughters, African descendants, all in the interest of African people primarily, and the rest of the world afterwards. So the Afri Dominion Show, essentially, it's a mouthpiece of the idea of the Afri Dominion. So here at this show, on this show, you can expect programs of which inspires, advocates, encourages, even help for a complete and total dominion of Africa by its sons, daughters, and African descendants from one country at a time, all in the interest of our African people primarily, and the rest of the world afterwards. Most of you, sometimes you send us messages saying, hey, how come you guys are just, focus on yourselves only? And I always get to respond, our house is on fire. Who else is responsible for our house when it's on fire except us primarily? Friends, neighbors, they can help us out, but they will not help us if we don't do it ourselves. So that's why we actually focusing on African people primarily. But we also do acknowledge that we have the rest of the planet also in need of Africa, as we all know. So on this show, on Afri Dominion show, the program is big. So we have taken it upon ourselves to actually split it, to have different themes. We broadcast Mondays all the way through Fridays from 12 p.m. to 1:30 Eastern Standard Time or Washington, D.C. time. On Mondays, we get to talk about the eradication of African refugees and African stateless person. On this particular theme, we run each and every programs that actually talk about our own families who are in predicament of refugee situation or have some situation of stateless situation within and outside of Africa. This has been going for many decades. I would even dare say for centuries also, even though back in those days, there weren't as many refugees as we have today. On Tuesdays, we get to talk about the Constitution, laws, and policy review and implementation. Again, we get to scrutinize the entire continent of Africa, one country at a time. How is the Constitution? How are the laws and policies benefiting the people? And if we find that these laws are not benefiting the people, we actually advocate. We also encourage a complete scrap of those laws. And then we can have an opportunity to actually select new ones. On Wednesdays, it's our testimony time. We get an opportunity to actually write our own history, especially the most of the Africa currently has a history that's been buried purposely. So we are resurrecting our history as far as we can be able to go back, and definitely as forward as all of us will have the privilege and the desire to preserve our own history. On Thursdays, we talk about the spirit of dominion. What is a spirit of dominion? Again, you keep on hearing this word, dominion, dominion, dominion. We love this word because this word, it's a unique word that actually speaks of who you are as a people. You guys are kings and queens, naturally. You are kings turned into presidents. Queens turned into presidents and prime ministers. You are not properly positioned. You're not positioned to the space you should be occupying right now. So we are advocating, we are inspiring you, we are encouraging and helping you reposition right back to your rightful position. We do this day in and day out, and we do not stop. And we are not going to stop either. So on Thursdays, when we talk about the spirit of dominion, we want you to take full control of Africa, full governorship of Africa, the full mastery, the full control, the full management of the entire Africa. For better management, split it to various nations, split them to various villages, split them again to your respective communities. Have that full dominion of your resources, your management, everything that there is to dominate, everything that there is to manage, everything that there is to master, everything that there is to control. It's up to you to get it done. On Thursdays, we get to talk about that. We get to explore why things aren't happening the way they should be happening. And we get to figure out what are the remedies for us to be able to take back what is rightfully ours. On Fridays, we get to talk about the current news and its impact to Africa and the African people. You get to actually set the agenda on Fridays. We pick up different news stories, especially some of those news stories that aren't necessarily making it to the mainstream media. Why? Because again, it is us who have to do the job. It is you, it is me, who have to actually stand up and get it done, and nobody else. So Friday, also we want to say welcome to all of you. Come and let's make it happen. So with that in mind, today is Wednesdays. I love Wednesdays because we get to talk about our history, our testimony, and all of you are welcome on Wednesdays. We would love to preserve as much history as possible because we have a rich history that has a mixture of the good, the bad, and the ugly. It is all ours. We are a product of our own history. And that actually helps us to know where we were yesterday, where we are today, and an opportunity to decide where we are going tomorrow. So, as I was talking to you last week, I was still sharing my own history. To be honest with you, I did not want to be here today. I literally did not want to be here today because Wednesday, when I was sharing with you, I felt like I was reliving the moment again. And there is a feeling that I cannot explain, only when some of you are telling some of your traumatic events or some of your past experiences that do not necessarily bring good memories. I was feeling like that. And nonetheless, given that we've committed to writing our own history, to share our own testimony, here I am today. And I also want to welcome all of you who also want to share. This is not a platform just for me. All of you can actually come over and you can come and share. So last Thursdays, when I was sharing with you, if my memory serves me correct, we have just survived the last roadblock down at the place called Nyabugogo. For those of you non-Rwandese of origin, or those who do not know Rwanda, I am from Rwanda. I come from Rwanda. That's where I was born. And back in 1994, when the genocide was taking place, literally we were there. I was a kid, but I remember just like it was yesterday. So I was sharing what it was like to live in the middle of that genocide, especially the journey out of the nation's capital, right where we lived, back to safety. Because given that there was an active war, killings and all of that, it wasn't safe for anybody. So just like everyone else, we also were looking for shelter. We also were looking for safety. And so we had to walk. We had to walk for some time, but that wasn't something new. Everybody was walking. Those who had vehicles, actually, surprisingly, I believe that they may have already left if their vehicle had not been taken. Because from my memory, if my memory serves me correct, our neighbors, they couldn't use their vehicles. As soon as the shooting started from April 6, 1994, the following days were really difficult. Vehicles were being taken away. Now, I don't know whether they were being taken away by the military or just people who needed vehicles, but they were being taken by gun. At least a few of them in my neighborhoods, they were being taken. And oftentimes, if you were traveling in a vehicle also, you'd sort of like wore a mark. Oftentimes, you had some explaining to do, especially if you didn't look right. You know what I mean? So, for us, we decided to just blend in like peasant because my family, they were searching for us. And so just for the sake of increasing our chances of survival, we decided to just, to blend in like a regular, like regular citizens. I remember we dressed really badly, like farmers and stuff. We just looked like we were nobodies. And so we went through some really difficult times on those roadblocks, especially the first 9 roadblocks that we went through. They were horrific. Those of you who want to hear or who want to listen to what I have shared, go backwards and look at part 1 of this conversation. And I think I may have called it What Life Was Like in the Middle of the Genocide. So this is like part 2, when we were leaving Kigali, or the capital of Rwanda. So here we are again on the last roadblock, right where they were literally butchering us. I remember me getting beaten by a machete on my back, not the sharp edge, but the flat side. So they usually hit you with the flat side before they hit you with the edge. That's what I was witnessing. So most of the people who were being killed by machetes, there is a way you pin down like a goat, an animal. When you hit it, it falls down. As soon as it falls down, then you can actually chop it. So all of us were being hit first so we can fall down, which meant we didn't have much chance to fight because we were pinned down. And minding you, there were so many, we were so few of us. And on our journey there, on the 9th roadblock, there was a family that had a Russian woman. It was a Rwandese person who had married a Russian woman. And this one was like the target of every roadblock that we were passing. To some degree, she took most of the heat that was supposed to have came to the rest of us. So naturally, on the 9th roadblocks, all of us, we were pinned down, ready to be killed pretty much. So before I knew it, I just heard a machete, bam, back in my back. And of course, I was just like a little piece of paper. I was skinny, I was a kid. As soon as they hit me, imagine like a really strong person who's really accustomed to killing, grabbing a machete and just hitting you with it. So they hit me with it, and of course I just went straight to the pavement, on the street pavement. And of course I was screaming, I was crying, and my father came down and he was screaming like, no, these are my children. So these guys, right before they started chopping us, the same way they were chopping a few others right next to us, all of a sudden, they started shooting. Now, I don't know where those guns came from, but I was so glad that they were shooting. That was like one of the first time that I have ever wished to just hear a machine gun going off, because it was literally shooting right where they were being, right where we were being killed. I don't even know why we didn't get shot by machete, by those bullets, but they were in close proximity. So all those Interahamwe's who were chopping people or who were killing people, they immediately ducked down because they didn't want to get shot. And I remember at home they had told us, listen, instead of dying by machete, just find someone who has a gun and just act up so they can shoot you. And since I knew I was gonna die anyway, I remember those words, find a gun, and I was hearing a bullet. I was listening to that machine gun, and I don't know where the strength came from. I just picked myself up, stood up, and I started running, hoping that one bullet can catch me at least, because I knew we were going to die. So I ran as fast as I could run. And I probably ran about maybe 30 or 40 meters, maybe no more than 50 meters. That machine gun went on for like at least a good 30 seconds nonstop. They literally shot all around, right where people were being killed. And to me, it was like angels shooting. So as soon as we ran away, I ran away. My family, they stayed there, they ducked down. And right after the machine gun stopped, my father called all of us his names. I remember when he called my name as well. I was like, I responded. And everybody who was there, they all surrounded towards where I was. And my father held my hands. And as soon as those Interahamwe, they realized that we were leaving. So they also came back. And again, the next miracle came over. A soldier out of nowhere, full of guns, bullets and everything. He claims that he knew us. He was like, hey, come, I was expecting you. But he was speaking in Kinyarwanda. Now, given that we didn't know this guy, and at first we looked to see whether it was one of us that he was calling, but he kept on insisting, come on, this is my family. So those Interahamwes, they came and then they were like, no, those are cockroaches. Now he was like, no, this is my family. Now he happened to have been one of those real soldiers. He was like a beret noir. He was wearing a black hat, which meant he was either a commando or an actual military soldier. And those guys were like the most lethal guys in the country. So when the Interahamwe saw that it was a really soldier with so much bullet on him, so they just, they pretty much cursed at him. They cursed at him plenty. So they were like, we see you. We're just gonna wait for you until those bullets are over or are done. And so the man told us, let's go, all of us, including that family with a Russian lady. So the man took us out of Nyabugogo. Nyabugogo is like a little small neighborhood. If you go on Google and you type in Nyabugogo, Rwanda, you'll get to see it. There's only one road that goes outside of Kigali. This road connects Kigali and Gitarama, and when you go into the northern district, or what used to be called Ruhengeri. So we were walking that street. And as soon as we left, he kept on he protected us like we were his own. And I was like, my God, this is impossible. But all of us, we didn't say a word. We didn't even say whether we knew him or not. We were like, okay, this has to be an angel. Especially that he wasn't coming to kill us. He was claiming to be our family member. So he literally escorted us out. And then maybe another 100 to 200 meters, we saw a vehicle exiting, and the man went in front of it and he was like, psh, stop. And of course it was a soldier. So the vehicle stopped. But when he stopped, he said we need a ride, but it was full. So he argued just a little bit with the driver. Then eventually he let it be. So we walked again, and then another vehicle came in. It was like a pickup. Another pickup came, so the pickups in Rwanda, they have these bars at the back where you can actually hold on to it. So that pickup also had people, but not too many of them. So he said, we need a ride. And it was more like he was instructing. It wasn't that he was requesting. So he was like ordering, we need a ride. And so the guy was like, okay, go ahead and get in. Didn't say one word. So the man took us, and then since he was headed towards Ruhengeri, as we were going towards Gitarama. So the man, as soon as we arrived to this little place they call Giti Kinyoni. This is like a junction where now you split if you're going towards Ruhengeri or Musanze. That's today's Musanze. Or when you go into Gitarama or towards Nyanza, it's like a junction. So the man, all of a sudden, he like turned right. We were like, stop, stop, stop. We're not headed towards Ruhengeri. We going towards Gitarama. So he was like, I'm sorry, I cannot take you guys because all these people, they headed towards Ruhengeri. So we get out of the vehicle and I was like, oh my God. So the man had only just drove us for like maybe 1 kilometer, 2 at the most. And I was like, my God, again, I was just imagining my feet. I was thinking of all that walk we've been walking for a couple of hours from our place to Nyabugogo. Even though under regular circumstances, it shouldn't be a long walk, but the stress of going through the roadblocks, the stress of buying your life, the stress of seeing dead people, people being killed on roadblocks, it felt like eternity. It literally felt like it was eternity. So I was thinking how much again we were going, to walk towards Gitarama. But the man was like, let's go. So we kept on going by foot. And the man escorted us by foot. And as soon as we arrived towards, there's a river. I believe it's called Nyabarongo. Yep, it is the river called Nyabarongo. Man, we could see dead bodies floating through the water. And as soon as we arrived, out of nowhere, they started shooting at us again. But this time, given that he had a gun, he told us to duck and he was looking at where the bullets were coming from. And surprisingly, these bullets, they seemed like they were going towards the river. So we stayed there for maybe a couple minutes. And when the bullet stopped, he looked in all directions and was like, let's keep him, let's keep him moving. So we kept on walking for maybe another 1 kilometer at the most. And there was a little shopping center. As soon as you get past Nyabarongo, that's a river in Rwanda, for those of you who do not know Nyabarongo. Again, Google it. You guys will get to see exactly where I'm referring to. There's only one road that takes everybody from the nation's capital, Kigali, going outside of Kigali. And that road, we were walking in it by foot. So Nyabarongo, it's a river that crosses the road. And literally, right after Nyabarongo, you get to see a little shopping center right afterwards. So we arrived there at the shopping center, and the whole entire place had been like evacuated. People were gone. So given that I think it was probably around 6 p.m., it was starting to get a little bit of dark. So the men trying to see if any of those shopping centers were open. None of them were open. So he naturally broke the door of one of the shopping center and was like, go ahead and get in. And man, luckily, as soon as we got in, there was food. I mean, he was like, help yourself. So you can imagine, we did not ask twice. I remember when you are afraid in dire situation, you do not even realize how much you are hungry. I remember when we saw food, it was like we have seen like some sort of other miracles. Remember, that food wasn't ours. So, but he was like, help yourself out. So we went and we ate. We ate what was basically available to be eaten there. And actually, that shopping center, it seemed like what seemed like a living room. That's where the shopping center was. At the back, I believe the family that owned the shopping center, they lived at the back. So there was a place to actually cook. And so we ate some of the non-perishable food that they had. I think there were some sardines and bread that they were selling. So we just took them off the shelves and we just killed the food. Reminding you, we had not eaten for a few days. We were just drinking uji, or millet, for the past couple of days. And then the whole walk of the day, they had taken our sugar. So we literally were starving. We were hungry. So we ate, but we were still afraid that Interahamwe could actually find us there. So the guy was like, now that you are here, you should be safe. This whole area, it's already been swept. It has been swept away. You're not gonna find any Interahamwes. So you guys stay put and make sure. First thing in the morning, you get to leave. Man, I could hear like this man sounded like he was leaving us. So we sort of like were really concerned and afraid. But he was like, I still gotta go back. There are more people that I have to get. And that's how I know that that man was an angel. So he was literally going back to Nyabugogo to see if there were any survivors and also escort them out. So now, ever since then, we've never got to see that soldier again. And whether he's alive or dead, I am super grateful, and I hope God actually receives him if he's long gone. But if he's still alive, I would want him to know that here I am. Here I am, 28 years later, I'm alive, and I'm testifying that he actually helped us out. He saved our lives on that day, on the 17th of April. So, of course, after the concerns, we gathered ourselves. Right after we ate, we slept on the floor. We did not care. It was so many of us. So many of us. I think there was like one little bed. So I think one of the family took that bed. But for the rest of us, we just slept on the floor, and it was okay. I mean, it was good to just lay down and rest. Lay down without guns, without hearing people wanting to kill you. It just felt so good. It felt so good to rest. And minding you, we had just eaten. And we had not eaten for like a few days back. So we slept. And of course, first thing early in the morning, we went right back on the main road, and we were headed towards Gitarama. Really early. They woke us up early, and given that we had actually slept in a shopping center, we sort of like helped out. We helped ourselves with the food from the shopping center. You may call it stealing. Back then it was not stealing. It was survival, okay? So in the morning, I remember we sort of like helped ourselves with the non-perishable items. I think we took some sugar, some sardines, and water. We took some water. Now, those of you, it was not bottled water, okay? There was this thing at home they call injerekani. It's like a big gallon, plastic gallon that they would hold some water in. So we literally took some water on the road because we had not had any water for quite some times. So yeah, we took other people's food and we headed out again on the road. And as you can imagine, it was so many families that was in that shopping center. Though we didn't take everything, but at least I would say what we have taken, we knew that we weren't going to be starving throughout that day. Because the anticipation was like for that whole day we were going to be walking, we could potentially arrive to Gitarama, sometimes hours later. But we just thought that it would be enough. So we started walking, and then after a few hours, a vehicle came by and we asked for a ride. And luckily, the person looked at us. He was like, man, I don't know how you guys made it over here, but go right ahead and jump in. Again, it was like a pickup. So the man actually, oh, God bless him. Imagine all that walk. we had walked maybe just a few kilometers. A vehicle versus foot walking, man, it's like heaven. So this man took us to Gitarama, and that family that we were fleeing with, who had a wife from Russia, he was besties, we prefer, or like prefer would be equivalent to like a governor. He was besties with the governor of Gitarama. So you can imagine, we asked that he takes us there. So we arrived to the governor's mansion, and of course he was so happy to see that family, and he introduced us that we were neighbors. So the man, all of a sudden he found like having at least, I think we're like 20 people. So of course, it was no issue for him. He took us in, all of us. And so he was like, so where would you guys like to go? He asked all of us where we were thinking of going. And he actually made arrangements for us. And that night, I remember we took a shower, guys. We took a shower at the governor's house. Man, we actually stank, but we didn't know we stank. So they were like, you guys need to freshen up. And there are things we take for granted, guys. During a war, the last thing on your mind is a shower. The last thing on your mind is dressing nice. The last thing on your mind is washing your face. The last thing on your mind is combing your hair. You'd sort of like forget the basic things that you care about every single day during normal times. So given that we had arrived there, we just didn't even remember the whole hygiene aspect of normal people. Now, given in Gitarama, there was no guns, no nothing. Somehow the whole ordeal of people dying wasn't there. So the prefet, he offered us a nice shower. I mean, he had maids. He told them, hey, take care of these people. And of course, they took care of us. So we took a shower. That was so good. And then, of course, he fed us. It was like a feast, like a party, like a celebration. He had a big table. As you can imagine, he was a governor, guys. So all of us, one thing that I can say about that man, I don't remember his name. He did not discriminate not one single person. Not one single person that we fled together. So without saying like, who are you? He did not ask us, he didn't ask our backgrounds, what our parents did, nothing like that. All he saw was like a bunch of family people who just need to be rescued, I guess. Especially that our neighbor with the Russian lady had already said, hey, I know these people, we were neighbors in Kiyovu. So the man fed us, man. And you can imagine, as kids, you forget quickly what life is like back in the days. I remember that evening, I felt like it was heaven. Because it was like the only time during those 2+ weeks that we saw people smiling, laughing, looking sort of like happy. And we saw some sort of normalcy in the family. It's been like a long time since we had something to eat in our own home. Besides guns and ducking and hiding in your own house, Over there, nobody was hiding. Like life was not disturbed in Gitarama. It was just like business as usual. Also adding that he was the most powerful man in the whole region, nothing could happen in his household. So that night he really treated us really good. And the next day he literally made arrangement for each and every one of us as families to go where we wanted to go. That family with the Russian people, they stayed there for us the very next day. We bailed by his blessings. So he actually helped us to catch a taxi. He was connected. He knew the taxis that were leaving Gitarama towards Butare. So we told him that we wanted to go towards Butare. And then our destination was Gikongolo. So he literally got us a ride. Didn't have to go outside on the street. Didn't have to hustle. He literally made sure that each and every one of those families that had stayed at his house the day before, that all of us we departed safely. And I'm super grateful because we did not get bothered by the soldiers on the streets. We didn't get bothered by nobody when we arrived in Gitarama. And so we headed towards Butare. And then as soon as we arrived in Butare, we continued towards Gikongolo. And I remember us arriving to, what's the name of that place? I don't remember. There is a town. Let me see if I see it on Google. That we arrived to in Gikongolo. But as soon as we arrived, we stopped there. And once we stopped there, we now looked for shelter. We looked for shelter. We knew people there. We were taken in. And then we literally stayed there. Besides, it was also like a zone turquoise, meaning the French people had carved a huge place from Gikongolo going towards Cyangugu, where actually was like it was like a safety zone. So given that we knew that we had arrived in zone turquoise, we were like, at least here, worst case scenario, Inkotanyi would not come here. Interahamwe would not come here and actually follow us. So we stayed there, and then eventually some family members, we linked up with some people, and then they took us for shelter. The rest of the families, everybody split pretty much. From Gitarama, I think we arrived with one family to Butare, and from Butare they split. We went straight towards Gikongoro because we were thinking zone turquoise. That's what our father was thinking. But luckily, we knew people in Gikongoro. Remind you, I have family from Cyangugu all the way to Butare. So that was a more familiar region because our family, we sort of like, we have strongholds in that whole entire region. So in Gikongolo, oh yes, I remember the place is called Karambi. Yes, that's it, Karambi. In Kinyarwanda, they say Kukarambi. So that's a place where we stopped, Karambi. And then we sort of like linked up with a family, and then that family later on, they took us for shelter to another location. And then we literally stayed there for 3 months. And from there, for those of you who do not know, it was like a complete 180 degree from coming from a war zone to a safety place, farmland. So that's the equivalent of where we actually went to hide. Literally deep in the farm, deep in the farm, right away. You don't even have like The streets are there, but they're very difficult. It's like dirt streets. And so, like I say, we have families in that whole region. So we literally went all the way up to one of our family members, and we literally we stay there for like 3 months, and then of course we'll be listening to what's going on. Life completely different, but we felt safety. We felt like it was really safe being there, and we started pretty much just blending in like everybody is. As kids, you sort of like used to everything. Now, given that it was deep in the farm, there was no electricity, there was no running water. So everything had, you had to do everything. And the kids had to work. Minding you, we only did that thing only during vacation time. So naturally, given that we were like extra, arriving, we sort of like had to pitch in. And of course, as kids, at first it was fun to go fetch water. It was good to help out, but man, it started becoming like a job because we were not accustomed to walking. They had help, but they expected all of us to actually pitch in because it was so many of us. At that particular family that took us in, and I'm super grateful for them because they literally protected us. Now, given that we had gone for hiding, we used to listen to Inkotanyi's radio to just get the news because Radio Rwanda had stopped just broadcasting. We could barely listen to it right where we were, but we could listen to shortwave. In Kotanyi, they had shortwave radio where you could at least listen to some news. And this one time, we hear our mother passing by, putting out an announcement like, hey, if my kids, if my family, if any one of you is alive, I survived too. I am in this place called Mulindi. That's like on the other side, close to Byumba, or the northeast side of Rwanda. So she was like, that's where she is, and she was looking for us. And wow, as soon as we heard of that, remember we were hiding. So now the people in the whole neighborhood that we were hiding in, they also listened to the same thing. Somehow, ever since Radio Rwanda stopped broadcasting, everybody turned naturally towards Muhabura radio, which was also talking Kinyarwanda. So remember BBC, we used to listen to BBC, we used to listen to Voice of America, and then Muhabura. Anything that would have Kinyarwanda, we will listen to it. Even RFI and France 24. That radio also, we would listen to it because they were literally broadcasting news about what was happening in Rwanda. And so now the whole neighborhood got to hear our mother on Radio Muhabura. That was like treason, literally treason. So we got the news, and then they came looking for us because some of them had seen us in the neighborhood. And I remember they were like, oh, so you guys are cockroaches. So I think they started sharing around in the neighborhood. And I don't know how our host did it, but they literally, I think either they bought off people. I have no idea what they did. But I remember that people really wanted us out because we were cockroaches there. So eventually, somehow, our mother got to find out where we were. Remember, in Zone Turquoise. So the RPF soldiers, one time, they snuck in. sometimes in July, I think, or June. They came and they were actually trying to find where we were. Now, minding you, we were skeptical. So when they came to look for us, I think Mom had given them something so that we would know it was them. However, I think it was Dad who, remember, reminding you, we used to go to fetch water, like in the river down there. So those guys, they knew that as long as they could actually recon the whole place, more likely they would know those cockroaches because people had started talking. So and then they got to hear that there was this household that was actually sheltering cockroaches, and ideally they started coming straight to that house. And then, of course, given that they were strangers, they had to introduce themselves in the most funniest way. So they were like, well, we are sent by this lady. They described our mother. And then these people, they panicked. They were like, oh, shoot. So we actually have the authentic cockroaches in this neighborhood. What if everybody sees them? But luckily, they came in the evening and they identified themselves. And then they were like, well, we have orders to take you guys back. So we're like, whose orders to take us back? We were like, we are safe here. They were like, no, we have orders to take you guys out. I think it was 2 guys who came, and they spoke a very good Kinyarwanda. Remember, we have been taught the cockroaches look like cockroaches. And given that we knew that they kill people, we were like, oh man, what if these people actually also kill us? Because we literally have never had any contact with cockroaches before. But this time they came looking for us because Mom had gone through the radio and somehow they had thought that we were one of them too as well. So they were like, we have orders to take you guys back in safety. And so we're like, so how exactly do you plan on doing that? They were like, don't worry, we already have a corridor, how we are going to do it. So they gave us instructions. Things that we had to do. And then in one of those evenings, we snuck out. But of course, we told our host family that we were going back. So we were headed back again towards Butare. Because by that time, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, they had already taken over the whole place. So these guys, they come in and then they were like, well, cross over on the river right where you guys fetch water. You will see this guy who look. I mean, they gave us instructions. So we went. The guy saw us. He was another guide. So he was like, follow me. So we followed them, and then we arrived to like a barracks of Inkotanyi. So they took us in, and then they were like, oh, these are the people that we went to see. They welcomed us. They literally welcomed us. And then as soon as they welcomed us, they identified themselves. And I was like, man, these guys are different. They're not like the ones who have been killing people. And so the first thing they started, I kid you not, they have people whose job was to immediately sort of like tell you, hey, we are good people. We are good people. Don't listen no more to what the radio used to say. Look at me, I'm not a cockroach. I mean, they literally went down and debunked everything that we were hearing. But I believe they were trained also, because they were literally right on point with the words that they used to say. So they were like, well, this place is not safe because it is close to Zone Turquoise and we are not permitted to be here. So they were like, we have to travel and go towards Butare, because Butare was already in the hands of RPF or the Rwanda Patriotic Front back then. So in that evening, we went towards Butare, and then of course there was one house that was vacated, and they put us in. They put us in that house, and they were like, well, stay here, we'll go and find you food. So they basically started taking care of us for like 2 days. And then eventually, Mom comes towards Butare from I think it was from Mulindi, yes, from Mulindi or Kigali. I don't know where she was, but I know that she traveled back to Butare. And then she's like, well, I'm so glad to see you guys. I thought you guys were dead. I mean, we got to have so much catch up as far as the whole 9 yards of what was happening with us. And then eventually they say, well, we have to go back to Kigali. We need you. They need our mother to go there. Remember, I have shared with you that my family, they were sort of like political. And the RPF needed everybody who had survived, at least who knew how to run a country or who has had some sort of position in the country, to go back so that they can actually form a government. So I remember now we were escorted back to Kigali just a few days afterwards. And lo and behold, we arrived to Kigali, the city stunk. The city stunk. They were still cleaning bodies off the streets. You could see dogs, hungry dogs, and some dogs were eating dead bodies. It was a terrible scene, guys. It was a terrible, terrible, terrible scene in Kigali. So we went back to Kiyovu. So from there on, they were like, well, stay put. But this time around, they were like, you guys don't go too far. But we never knew why they told us don't go too far. So apparently, if they did not know you, they were literally cleaning all the survivors, especially you sort of like had to explain how you survived. And I remember probably a few days afterwards, it was Monday morning. Our mother had already gone out. And so these guys, they come at home and they take our father. Literally, they were like, well, you got to come with us. And then we're like, where are you taking him? They didn't say. So they literally took him to prison. And so we're like, is he coming back? Of course, we're just kids. So they were like, see you guys. So they were like, we're going to ask him some questions. So they took our father. We did not know what to do. Minding you, we are like under kids. We are underage kids at the house. We don't know what to do. We don't have a maid. We don't have nobody. It was just us. And so telephones were not working, so we could not get in touch with our mother to tell her what has happened. And apparently, one of the soldiers who had escorted us, he lived right next to our place. So we were like, well, they took our father, and then they're like, didn't I tell you guys not to go far? We were like, they came home. And so he was like what they call a afande. He was like an officer. So he was like, what did these people look like? We could not describe. So he went on the radio. He tried to find out who was patrolling the neighborhood, but they just couldn't tell. And so our father goes missing for 3 days. They had taken him to jail to explain, some things. And I remember this Afande, he went to every single brigade in Kigali. And I think he found our father in the brigade in Biryogo. It's one of another little town in Kigali. Biryogo is like not so far from Kankigali, or it's another military base. So he found them really questioning him and beating him up. And so they were like, yes, Afande. They're like, why are you here? And then he was like, why have you taken this man? And then we were like, we were just following orders. So, and I remember, from what I have heard, those people, those soldiers who took our father, they literally got apprehended. Why? Remember, they needed my mother. So there was no way they could take my father in when my mother was helping setting up the government. And they were like, we are so sorry, blah, 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 blah. So lo and behold, our father comes back, but he came back funny. He came back funny. It was like, something happened to him. But one thing we knew, you could see where they had beaten him up. He just wasn't the same, guys. He was not the same. And I remember he didn't talk for, that whole day. He just said hi to us and he went to sleep. So now, remember, for those past 3 months, we were sort of like accustomed to becoming almost self-sufficient. We had learned how to take care of ourselves, but at least with the supervision of an adult. So we started learning how to cook, like kids would cook. Life was just different, guys. Life was different. We were literally being fed by those soldiers, the Afande who lived right next to us. He literally would go and buy food for us and bring us food, because he was like, you guys stay put, do not go anywhere, especially females, because they were raping women. But rape is what I know. It was called intsinzi. So if they found a woman in your house, that woman had to pretty much appreciate herself by offering her body to the soldier, because they had won the country, they had won the war. So it was like, make sure none of you has to go out, stay indoor, especially females. So there were some specific instructions that Afande had given us. And then he was like, Dad, stay in the house. Don't go outside anymore. Otherwise, they might scoop you by accident. And this time around, you might not be able to come back. Because, obviously his job was not to chaperone us or to guard us. But he was like, if anything happens, just let us know. We'll take care of you guys. And so we stayed put. We weren't going anywhere. We just stayed at home all the time. And of course, you could see the patrol passing by. Sometimes they would come at home and ask if we are harboring anybody there. We would say no. And then they would just keep on moving, especially that they knew that Afandi lived next door. They would see the kadogos. The kadogos were these kids who were assisting officers. When the foreign Rwandan patriotic arrived in Rwanda, they didn't have adult soldiers, most of them. They had small kids, child soldiers who were pretty much taking care of them. So at home, you would find, what they used to call kadogo. Those kids will actually stay behind Afande's home. They will run errands. They would take care of the basic things, basically. So they saw the kadogos right next to us, and those kadogos had been told, if you see any patrol coming to our house, to immediately intercept them and tell them, hey, off limit here. So naturally, they kept on helping us out like that. And eventually, we stayed there the whole 94. It was up and down, really, up and down, up and down. 95 arrives. They had already set up the new government. And then afterwards, they're like, well, you guys, we need you to go to America. Because we need you guys in America so you can go speak on behalf of the government. So, of course, we were like, my God, this is impossible. At least as kids. Because we were like, the farthest thing we can imagine is Europe. Because in Europe, our family had gone there. Or at least everybody within the family, at least we knew Europe was a destination. But America, specifically the United States of America, it was a no-no. It was literally a no-no. So when we heard of that, we were like, oh my God, let's hope that this is not a joke. Because we were like, man, we can actually leave this place. That's what was in my head as a kid. So we're imagining, you know, from machetes to going outside of a country, legally leaving the country. So it was almost like impossible. So the time came, I believe, if my memory serves me correct, March 1995. That's when we actually were told, now you guys have to go. Everything is ready. You need to go to America. So they sent us here to the United States in March 1995. I think it was like the third week. The dates might be a little off, but I know it was literally the third week. So we were so thrilled, guys, because I was like, bye. I was just imagining just the crazy life, the crimes, the rapes, being imprisoned in your own house, the beatings, the imprisonment of our father, the rapes in the neighborhood. I mean, it was crazy. So we were like, you know what, thank God that we could actually get out of here. I was just happy as a kid. So in March, we left. We came to Washington, D.C. in the United States. Think about it. Not only we came in the United States, but we came as diplomats. Something I have never thought that would happen in my whole entire life. Ask me why, because I guess we just didn't, you know, I never knew any diplomats. So we came here, and of course, we started living here in the United States. Ever since then, really, ever since then. But of course, that cordial relationship, it didn't last, because based on what was happening, some things changed, you know. The relationship between my family and the government changed, that only within like 1 year, everything flipped, you know. And we found ourselves again now in a strange land that we had no idea how to live in a country as big as the United States. I mean, we got squeezed, guys. Remember, we were so happy to come to the United States. But you can only be happy when you have the means to live in the United States. So, when the relationship changed, the government cut us off. And when I say they cut us off, they literally cut us off. They called the State Department. They kicked us out of the house. They put us in handcuffs, all of us. I'm talking about the United States government. The new ambassador, who was Theogene Rudasingwa, he literally called the State Department. They say that the Rwandan embassy had been attacked, by Interahamwe, you know. And the job of the Secret Service is to protect a nation. For those of you who do not know, here in the United States, the Secret Service, they oversee the security of all embassies. Because an embassy, it's actually a country. So I found out that later too. So these guys, they came in, and the first thing we knew, they put us all in handcuffs. So back then we lived at the embassy. It's like a huge building in Washington, D.C. Those of you who know where the Rwandan embassy is, we literally occupied the whole thing. We had like 2 floors that they had given us. Especially that they didn't have any staffs except except just us, and I think it was like 3 people staff in the whole embassy. So the Secret Service, they come in and they put us back in handcuffs. That looked so familiar. I remember my father getting arrested, but this time it was all of us. All of us. Mom, dad, all of us kids in handcuffs. So they were like, you guys gotta get out here. So we were like, no, we are Rwandese people. So we yelled that we were Rwandese. They were not listening to it. So, of course, the cops win, always win in the United States. You do not fight the cops, let alone you do not fight the Secret Service. These are a different kind of cops, guys. Don't mess with the Secret Service. You can mess with the regular cop, not a Secret Service police officer. So these guys take us out. Yeah, our father came afterwards, guys. He did come afterwards. But we didn't come immediately at the same time, but he did come eventually to the United States afterwards. But as soon as we got together again, the United States government, using the Secret Service, they came to the rescue of the embassy that had been attacked by Interahamwe, and they threw us out of Rwanda. Minding you, each and every one of us had a diplomatic passport. Let me repeat. They throw us out of the embassy of Rwanda. They threw us out of Rwanda. Didn't check who we were. They just came to fight Interahamwe because that's what the ambassador had told them. So I remember all of us getting handcuffed, including my little brother, who was like, he was just a kid. He was only probably 8, 7, 8. All of us in handcuffs. All of us, every single family member, all of us in handcuffs. Then those of you who knew, right in Washington, D.C., they have this little walkaway. They throw us out of the embassy, and then they just throw us right there on the street. And as soon as they did that, we were like, why did you, our parents were literally yelling at them and saying, why would you remove us out of our own country? And then eventually, those guys, they realized that they didn't check IDs. As soon as they checked IDs, they realized each and every one of us had diplomatic passports. Remember, they had just thrown us out of Rwanda. And I believe it was Friday night too. Because we had just came back from school, and then we had this little problem, and then they threw us out. So, after they threw us out, they realized we were diplomats. They immediately called the State Department. They were like, we did something that's never been done before. We threw out some diplomats from their own embassy to the streets of Washington, D.C. And I remember those guys, they stayed for like 1 hour trying to figure out what to do with us. And they had the audacity to say, do you guys have somewhere to go? We were like, Dad, that was our home. And you guys took us out. They were like, well, we didn't know. We were misinformed. So they tried to apologize, but it was too late because we couldn't go back at the embassy. They had already changed the locks of the door, everything. And the police, they helped. Minding you, when they took us out of the embassy, the same way we left school, I had my school bag, my brother had his school bag and my sibling, and I think Mom had a purse, and Dad had nothing. That's the way we were thrown out, in handcuffs. So these guys, they thought about everything. They were like, oh shoot, what do we do? Of course, we are on the streets of Washington, D.C. We know nobody in the whole entire United States. Literally, we know nobody in the United States. So we were like, oh shoot, what are we gonna do? Now the rough life starts. Remember, we're so happy to come in the United States. But I remember on that day, it was the worst thing that could happen. Didn't know where to go to sleep. Didn't have friends. We couldn't go back to Rwanda. And certainly the Secret Service did not offer us any shelter. So the State Department tells the Secret Service, give him a card, a business card, and for them to call us back on Monday so we can figure out this whole problem. But then we're like, so what do we do? You guys just throw us out of our own home. Where do we sleep tonight? And I remember there were a few religious people who actually came and they sheltered us. Minding you, from having your own place to going in a shelter. We didn't even know what a shelter is, because we've never been in that situation except when we fled as refugees. A shelter somewhere, you just sleep as you can. So a benevolent took us in. And after they took us in, it was rough, guys. It was rough. When I say rough, it was rough. So that Monday, they were like, okay, you kids have to go to school. But we're like, we still got the same clothes. How are we going to go to school? Same clothes, same everything. It was the worst thing that could happen. And I think our parents, they try to go to the State Department, trying to sort the thing out. And they were trying to apologize. I mean, they sort of like were like, we are sorry, blah, 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 blah. But it was too late. And eventually they were like, well, since we threw you guys out, obviously we're going to have to figure out what to do with you guys. So they realized that the ambassador had lied about us, and he literally used so much power to remove other diplomats. And then I believe he had the audacity to attempt to fire my mother. He attempted to stop her from work. And he doesn't have the authority to do that. And I think he may have presented something like that, or mom was told that she had been fired by the ambassador, but then they knew that the protocol could not just arrive. As soon as they realized that the way that they had actually lied to the American government, they're trying to fix it quickly. But it was too late, because for Rwanda to recall a diplomat, there are proper channels that everything has to go through. Given that none of it had been followed, and also we were violated, put in handcuffs in '95, that was something that has never been heard of. The first and foremost, we were told not to go to any newspaper because it was going to be a scandal. Can you imagine the United States government arresting the entire diplomatic corps family? Not just the adult and the minor and the kids. Can you just see that on Washington Post or New York Post? So first and foremost, they were like, do not approach any newspaper. We will sort out this problem. It's an honest mistake. So they literally gave us orders not to go to the newspapers. I remember that much. And so Monday, they worked something out. They gave us lawyers and everything. I mean, they worked magic. And when I say they worked magic, the U.S. government worked magic to squash all of that stuff. So I believe that from that week to the next, 3 months at the most, the United States government had pretty much fixed everything on our end, meaning they have given us now the legal papers to be in the United States because they made a mistake. They made a mistake. They threw us out of Rwanda based on the lies by the then ambassador, Theogene. And given that they were liable to our well-being, they actually fixed us out. But also, fixing us out wasn't enough. Normally, when you come to the United States, especially if you're like a refugee, you have this organization that help you to sort of like establish yourself. Us, we didn't have anybody. All they wanted to do was to make sure that at least we have legal papers to allow us to be in the United States, and then everything else we're gonna have to go figure on our own. That's all they did. And so we sort of like started figuring out life from scratch. And when I say from scratch, rough life. The kind of life that we've never even lived in Rwanda. And right then and there, I knew that life was gonna be different. Remember, life was already different in Rwanda. But also, coming to America was like, oh man, life is coming back to normal. But life also it became something else that I could never had conceptualized in my head. And afterwards, we started rebuilding brick by brick, brick by brick, brick by brick, here in the United States. But I guess maybe I can share that later. Remember all those degrees that you guys usually have under your belts? They don't work in the United States, guys. If you graduated from Rwanda with all kinds of honor degrees, in the United States, none of it work. So you can imagine our parents, they were well educated, but nobody would give them a job because they just didn't study in the United States. Their degrees became zero in the United States. I repeat, their degrees became zero. So how do you make a living when nobody wants to give you a job? When you pretty much are being told, hey, start from scratch. If you want to work here, you got to go back in school, you got to do this and that and that and that. And you got a bunch of kids that you have to feed, it's a mouth to feed. So you can imagine. I remember my family, I think the first job that they landed was like passing newspapers. There's a way that they deliver, newspaper delivery. Think about someone working for the government, a diplomat, delivering newspaper in Washington, D.C. Getting paid, how much was it? $7 an hour, $8 an hour, something like that. That's how far below our life was. Really, really terrible. Really, really bad. They couldn't get hired to do what they were trained to do. Plus, they were black. They were Africans. Africans' degrees don't work in the United States. It is not discrimination. It's the truth. At least from back in '95. Those degrees were not working. I don't know about today, but the degrees that they had didn't work. So they were delivering newspaper in Washington, D.C. But D.C. was still an expensive city. So you can imagine what we went through. Really rough life. I mean, there's one thing to be poor in Rwanda, and there is another thing to be poor in the United States, in Washington, D.C. And I'm being told that my time's up, so I'm gonna cut it short here. But I want you guys to know that Oh yeah, Kagoma, that's what happened. The Clinton administration, they made sure that this thing was covered up. Absolutely. Our names were known in newspapers, and we were not. They weren't gonna scoop us up. Because it became like a national security problem at that point. Because it has never been heard where a secret service can make such a mistake, given how much they are like prestigious. It's a prestigious organization. They just don't make those kind of mistakes, but they did. And that's how we ended up in the United States on the other side. Anyway, guys, perhaps next time I will share the rest of this, the rest of the story. But I gotta tell you, we've started so many times from scratch in Rwanda, from Ruhengeri. We started fresh many times in Kigali also. We had to start fresh. And then coming to the United States, starting from scratch, not knowing life at all, not connected to any charity organization, not connected to any refugees organization. We couldn't qualify for any of those benefits that normally like a refugee person can qualify to. We were just like the people in the United States, but we had no idea what United States was. We literally learned as we go. All of us as a family. Anyway, that's my story for now. I am told that I gotta cut it from here. Thank you guys so much for listening to me. I feel funny sharing because I've never shared this story before, but I have an obligation to write this history, to testify, because I want you guys to testify. We gotta write these stories, and they have to be preserved for millennia. The stories that we have, our testimonies, they can only change the course of history only and only if they are known. If you are too embarrassed, if you are too afraid to actually come out and stand on your 2 feet, accept who you are, accept your own family, you won't be able to seize our inheritance right back at home. So we gotta write our own history. We have to accept who we are as a people. It's inevitable. Nobody asked for it, but when you have it, you gotta work it out. Over here they say, when you are given lemons, make some lemonade out of it. We had to learn how to make lemonade. Even when we didn't know what lemon, how it was being done. Well, we had to learn somehow. And here I am. I survived, guys. I also survived the streets of Washington, D.C. I didn't become a thug. I didn't become a drug dealer. I did well at school and some other things that I had to go through. I had to learn how to deal with life despite the difficulties of living in the United States, not knowing what United States is or was. But I'm super grateful because the life that we have lived here in the United States also propelled me, and it prepared me as well for the person that I am today. Today I am not afraid to start from scratch at any given time. You can throw me anywhere around the globe, around the planet, and I am going to make it. Because my Father in heaven, as long as it says, my son, you are still breathing, I still need you on this planet. Nothing is too strong for me. And I tell you the same thing as well. As long as God still says, you are still here, I still need you. Nobody would ever say anything more about you. And with that in mind, guys, I am so grateful for those of you listening on television, on radio station, and certainly my dear friends on social media. I'm super grateful for having hanged out with you guys throughout this testimony time. Feel free to send us some feedback at afridominion.com or www.afridominion.com, and send us an email at info@afridominion.com. I am Freeman Singirankabo with Afri Dominion Show. Until next time, so long.